because you are looking to get a clear understanding on the definitions of roles under the topic of agency. The topic of agency, whether you are going to go through the testing facility of PSI or you're going to do through Pearson VUE, those are the two major ones in the country. The topic of agency is going to be at the top 3, if not the top 2, that produce the most questions on the real estate exam. So when you're taking the class, if you haven't participated in a real estate transaction, it could get confusing. I'm here to help you with that in terms of the definitions. If we haven't met yet, my name is Brenda Kasuva. Go ahead and connect with me on social media with my first and last name, or you can find me with Training with Brenda is how you are able to find me as well. I am here to connect the dots, the different terms that you might hear connected with this thing called agency. An agency is a relationship that is created between the broker and the client. Let's get started with some of the words that I am going to review. These are arranged alphabetically. I am going to go through them in a different sequence, but words you might hear while you're taking the real estate course or you're getting ready to pass the exam is really understanding the difference between agent, broker, client, customer, designated agent, dual agent, general agent, licensee, salesperson, or universal agent. So I'm going to do my best and go through these particular terms. Let's start with the first one, broker. Who is the broker? The broker is the person or the company. This is where I'm going to give examples of companies you might have heard of, like Coldwell Banker, Long and Foster, EXP, Century 21. Some of these are franchises. You might have heard them throughout the country. That's the company. And then broker is the person who's spearheading that particular company. Sort of like every company has a CEO or a president. Let's simplify it and maybe call this person the broker. Yes, I know in Maryland, this is the person who's going to supervise what you do. For simplicity, broker or company, they are licensed to help someone buy, sell, and they're going to charge a fee, what some of us know as commission. So this is the broker, the person who's been hired to do that particular job, help a buyer, seller, landlord, or tenant, and they're going to charge a fee. That's the commission. So broker in the agency part of it is going to be the agent. The agent is the person who has been hired by the client for them to do something. I'm sure you've heard, oh, I need to call my insurance agent to find out what I need to know about my policy. Your accountant could also be referenced to as your agent. Your lawyer could also be referenced to as your agent. This is the person who's working on your behalf and looking out for your interest. If you bring that into real estate, that's going to be the person you, the buyer, you, the seller, you, the landlord, you, the tenant, are going to hire this person to be able to look out for your interest in terms of what you need to get done in real estate. Agent, broker are going to be the same person. When you sign that agreement, you being the buyer, seller, landlord, or tenant with a salesperson or an agent or a company, you have hired that person to do something for you. So this is a person who's working on your behalf, dear buyer, seller, landlord, or tenant, when you've signed an agreement. That is your agent. That is the broker. So what does this mean? I'm going to use an analysis that I love this movie a lot, this animation. So in class, this is what I use. So think of this as I'm going to be using Despicable Me. You will see an image of it in a moment as I'm explaining it. So the agent, the broker, that's the person who's been hired by the buyer, seller, landlord, or tenant. Now, if it's a big company like EXP or Coulter Banker or Long and Foster or Remax, it's a big company. One person cannot do all the job that is required when somebody's buying, selling, or leasing. So they're going to have people working for them. This is now probably what some of you are going to be once you finish the course. So when you are getting started and taking the licensing course, you're going to start off at the entry level, which is where you're going to be referenced to as a salesperson or a sales associate, depends on what the term is in your area, or an associate licensee. So these are the people who are working on behalf of the agent, the broker. That is why we call ourselves agents, because we're doing the work on behalf of our broker. So I'm going to be reviewing this a couple times. So again, the salesperson or sales associate or associate licensee, this is again the person who's doing the work on behalf of the broker. The broker is the agent who was hired by the buyer, the seller, the landlord, or the tenant. And then the actual work is being done by us. So I planted the seed. I'm going to explain this one, and this is where I use this analysis. So hopefully if it's posted online, I have permission to use this particular image is where I'm going to use this analysis. Some of you are familiar with this animation, Despicable Me. The minions, and I'm not insulting you, the minions is us, the worker bees that are going out there to do the job on behalf of the broker, Mr. Gru. The broker, Mr. Gru, is the one that has been hired by the buyer, the seller, the landlord, or the tenant to do something. Mr. Gru cannot do it all. So Mr. Gru is going to have minions working on behalf of him, and he's supervising everything that we're doing. When he gets the commission, he's then going to split it with the person who did the job. So the salesperson or the associate licensee or sales associate, whatever word you use in your state, I'm going to simplify it as a minion or the worker bee. The agent broker is Mr. Gru, the person who was hired to do the job. So real estate licensee. So now we've covered a couple of terms here. Real estate licensee is all of us, including Mr. Gru, your broker. Why? You become a broker after a certain period of time that you've had your real estate license as a salesperson, the entry level, and then you graduate to become the broker. So broker, for example, in Maryland, to become a broker, I need to be licensed as a salesperson for 3 years. I take a course, I take an exam, and then I will graduate to become a broker. I am still referenced to as a licensee. Why? Because a licensee is pretty much anyone who has a license. This is you, the person who's taken the entry-level class right now to get your real estate license. This is me, who's already been licensed for over 15 years, and I just did my broker classes, and I passed the exam last year in August. When I went to become a broker, I'm still going to have a license. So real estate licensees, all of us, anyone who's taken the course, however many hours it is in your state, you've gone and passed the exam, and then you have a license. So in the exam, you kind of need to read and determine, are they talking about the minion, the worker bee, or are they talking about the CEO, the president, the broker in this particular question? Licensee is everyone who has taken the classes needed, taken the exam, and passed. The next terminology is customer. Customer is a person. In real estate terms, we have to differentiate between customer and client. Customer is the person who doesn't have an agreement with you. This is a person shopping online. This is a person who's going to be your future client. This is what some of you will call leads. This is what some of you will call prospects. A customer is a person with whom you don't have an agreement with. This is someone shopping who's going to, in the future, be converted to a client. Customer, I don't have a contract with this person, but in agency terms, I, the salesperson, I, the broker, still owe certain things to this person. And when you go review, that's the 3 things: reasonable care, honesty and fairness, disclosure of material facts. Customer, you don't have an agreement with the person. So how is that different from the client? The client is a person with whom you have an agreement with. The client, you have an agreement with that person. Another word for client is the principal. This is the person you are working for. This is the buyer who signed an agreement. Now they want to buy a house. You're showing them houses. You're guiding them on financing. And then when you've done what it is that they hired you to do, then you would be getting compensated. So client, the agent works for this person. Client, principal, same thing. This is the boss, the person whom we're working for. Now, when you complete the class, and then now you decide which company you're going to work for. So now I'm switching hats to you, the person who's taken the real estate class right now, or you're working on passing your real estate exam. I'm not talking to you. You've now passed the exam and you've decided which company you're going to work for. So now let's talk about you. You now have passed the exam. You've decided that you're going to work for a company. Let's give today's example. Let's assume that's EXP. So once you join that company, remember there's a broker for that particular company. The broker is going to be the one that's going to be hired by the buyers, the sellers, the landlords, and the tenants. And then the work is going to be done by you, for example. So the broker is going to be referenced to as a special agent in reference to the buyer that hired the broker, the seller that hired the broker, the landlord that hired the broker, the tenant who hired the broker. They're a special agent because there's an expiration time frame for this particular job that the broker was hired to do, which is what? Help the buyer find a house, work with the seller to sell the house, work with the landlord to get the house rented out, or work with the tenant for them to find a place to rent. Special agent is what a broker is when the client has hired the broker to do one specific thing, sell the house. Special agent, it has a limitation in terms of how long you're being hired to do this particular task. That is what the broker is to the client. And then now we get to dual agency. Dual agency comes about when we have one company working for the buyer and the seller in the same transaction, one company or broker or agent working for the landlord or tenant. So it's how it is, and this is how it works in my state in Maryland, is the broker is the agent, and then the broker is going to assign 2 salespeople, 2 minions. Hey, Brenda, work with the seller. Hey, Sheila, you work with the buyer. So dual agency is where you have an agent working for the buyer, and the agent is also working for the seller. In Maryland, it's going to be the broker. So eXp Realty has been hired by the seller because Brenda works for EXP. EXP has also been hired by the buyer because this other agent, Sheila, has been hired by the buyer as well. So this is where we get into dual agency. You have one agent, one broker representing two principals, two clients, buyer and seller, landlord and tenant. Since again, the buyer and the seller have hired the agent will then have what we call the designated agency. So again, in review, dual agencies where you have same buyer and then the same buyer, tenant, same seller, landlord, all working within the same company. They've all hired the same company and it's the same address. Sheila is buying 3417 Pennsylvania Avenue. My seller, Kevin, is selling 3417 Pennsylvania Avenue. My seller has hired me. I work for EXP. Sheila has hired Kevin, and Kevin also works for EXP. So EXP is the dual agent. Now, myself and the other agent who's working for the buyer, we both work for the same company. So dual agency is where here in Maryland, it's simple enough to where I say that's the broker. So then what happens is where we have designated agents. Designated agents are the two minions working. One is working for the seller. One is working for the buyer. They're both working within the same company. Designated agent happens when you have dual agency. One company has been hired by the buyer and the seller. The buyer is working for Sheila, the agent. The seller is working with me, the agent. And Sheila and I work for the same company. We, the minions, working on behalf of the broker, are referenced to as designated agents. Then we have universal agent. So a universal agent it is rare for the real estate agent to also be a universal agent. So universal agent is where, as you're doing your studies, is where it ends up being with the example of what someone has when they have signed a power of attorney document. So when you have a power of attorney document signed, what does that mean? That person can do anything and everything as if they are you. They don't need to get your permission to close your bank accounts. They don't need to get your permission to sell the houses, to buy the houses. This is the universal agent. We then have a general agent. General agent is where this person is doing multiple things. General agent is where this person is doing multiple things. This person is working for you and they're doing multiple things. So here, the example that we like to use is a property manager. The property manager has been hired by you. It is ongoing. The property manager is going to be collecting rent, screening the tenants, making sure that the property is habitable. That's a general agent. Now let me pause here. I, Brenda, currently at EXP Realty, I am also referenced to as a general agent of my broker. Why? I am doing multiple things. It is an ongoing relationship that I have with EXP. As long as I am with them, I am doing multiple things on behalf of my broker. Multiple things meaning what? I'm working with several buyers right now. I'm working with several sellers, landlords, and tenants. I'm doing all of this job or all of these tasks on behalf of my broker. So I, as a salesperson, could also be referenced to as a general agent in relation in terms of the broker relationship that I have. So general agent, property manager is a good example. If you're a salesperson, you're a general agent to your broker. And this is where you will have determined, right? Are you an employee or an independent contractor? You're still doing some jobs or tasks all on behalf of your broker. It is ongoing. Special agent has an expiration date. Special agent is when the broker has been hired by the seller, landlord, tenant, or seller, buyer, landlord, or tenant to do one thing, and it does expire once the person has done what it is they were hired to do. The last definition that we're going to go over is a non-agent. This is something that we don't get to enjoy in Maryland. So other states, you can be educating me on this. So a non-agent is a middle person who's just facilitating the transaction to where they're just getting the transaction done. They're not really working for the buyer. They're not really working for the seller. That is the definition of non-agency or non-agent, because sometimes in class I'll be asked, so who pays? It depends on who it is that wants to get this relationship to be set up. Non-agent, middle person who's helping the buyer get a house, or the seller sell the house, but they're not really representing one side over the other. That was a brief synopsis of some of the terms you're going to be exposed to when you are taking the exam. I'd love for you to put in your questions or comments on the comments box. I will definitely be looking at them and responding. Here's my challenge as to what comes next for you. If you haven't taken the exam yet, I strongly suggest you go ahead and schedule it. Once you have a date, the better. Go ahead and get your study bulletin. If it's PSI or Pearson VUE, there's a video that I'm going to link to that you're able to go and get the breakdown of your exam questions. I'm available for tutor or small group coaching sessions. Map out your time, study, continue watching the videos that we have available on YouTube, and subscribe. There are a lot of resources that you are able to engage in order for you to be successful that we offer. One of them is every month, the first Tuesday at 6:30, we have an exam prep that we do, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, that you're welcome to attend. And then we get into what comes after you pass the exam, those questions you have in terms of picking a broker or budget that you need to be aware of, that when you pass the exam, what you need to be aware of. That's on the third Monday of every month at 5. I mentioned my YouTube channel as well. Go ahead and find me on YouTube, Brenda Kasuva. Subscribe. We'll be posting more videos there as well. Take care.